And as we've been reporting, Hezbollah fighters have shelled territory under Israeli occupation with mortar strikes. Israel has fired artillery following that. Shebaa Farms is situated along the border between Lebanon and Syria's Golan Heights, which was occupied by Israel in 1967. Zeina Khodr joins us now live from southern Lebanon. Let's start with the location where Hezbollah fired upon. How significant is it that it chose the Shebaa Farms rather than an area in the south along the border with Israel?
Well, yes, Hezbollah treading carefully, trying to avoid a wider confrontation, but sending a message to the Israelis that we are here, we are ready to join the fight. Shebaa is a territory that is occupied by Israel, seen by Lebanon as its own territory. So Hezbollah saying that this is a legitimate fight, but in its statement also saying that it is showing solidarity with the Palestinian people who are fighting the Israelis. And a short while ago, a high-ranking Hezbollah official really made the group's position even clearer. He said that we are not staying neutral in this conflict. In his words, today we sent a message through the attack that was carried out in Shebaa, and this Israel should understand this clearly. And in his words, Israel and the United States should stop this stupidity. That was the word that they used. Stop this stupidity, or else the whole region will be involved in this war. So basically saying that the equation that Hezbollah has established, unifying the fronts of the different Lebanese armed groups as well as Palestinian armed groups, part of the so-called axis of resistance, will come together and wage this war together. So this is the message coming from Hezbollah at the moment. There is a cautious calm along the border just behind me. On top of that hill is the Israeli position that was targeted in the early hours of the morning.
Zeina, what is the bottom line for many people who I'm sure have the question on their minds? Are we going to see a repeat of the 2006 war? Is this escalating in the south of Lebanon?
People are worried. Many Lebanese are worried because that was a devastating war more than a month in 2006 between Israel and Hezbollah. And that's why Hezbollah knows that it has domestic political opponents. And many people here will say this country cannot afford a war. The state is nearly bankrupt, and there is a dire economic crisis now in its fourth year, and there's also a political crisis where there is no president, there is no functioning government, there is a need for billions of dollars to revive the economy, and many people believe that Hezbollah should not act on its own. It should respect the state's sovereignty. It should not be the one who decides whether this country is at war or peace, and many accuse the group of being an arm of Iran and implementing Iran's policy. The group does not hide away or shy away from the fact that it is backed by Iran and it receives funding from Iran. So this is definitely, Hezbollah's involvement in this war will definitely divide the society even further and deepen the political crisis in the country.
All right, thank you so much. Well, Nimrod Goren is joining us now from West Jerusalem. He's a senior fellow for Israeli affairs at the Middle East Institute. Good to have you with us. So first of all, how much of a failure, how politically compromising is this for the Israeli government?
The Israeli discussion is still dealing with the security rather than with the political, because we are experiencing a security event that is unprecedented in Israeli history, very different than previous escalations or cycles with warfare with Gaza. At this time, it was not an evolving crisis out of any Israeli action. It was out of the blue, targeting civilians, large losses, still ongoing, many being captive. So I think the Israeli focus now is in how to solve the current security situation and deal with the politics later.
You say out of the blue, but let me read to you here a statement by the Secretary General of Amnesty International dated October the 7th, where from what she's saying, it doesn't seem out of the blue. She references the need for the Israeli government to refrain from inciting violence, tension in the occupied West Bank. She calls for the root causes of the violence to be addressed and goes on to list the 16-year-long illegal blockade on Gaza and ending other aspects of, quote, Israel's system of apartheid imposed on all Palestinians. Do you think that this might shift Israeli thinking somewhere to start thinking about dealing with the root causes?
I think those are different things because, we know the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is long-lasting and it has different attitudes towards it and different approaches. There are different reports mentioning different situations, but reality is bad. Reality is bad for the Palestinians under occupation. It's bad for Israelis who do not enjoy peace with their neighbors. And this is ongoing, and we saw lots of escalation along the way and lots of efforts to resolve the conflict, which usually did not succeed. When I mention out of the blue, I'm referring to the immediate situation prior to yesterday's attack. If you recall previous cycles in Gaza, usually there were either assassinations or rockets towards the nearby villages in Gaza. It was something that went on in the
sir, we have, it may not have been very reported in all parts of the press, but we have been covering incidents of Israeli actions in the al-Aqsa mosque compound, which the Palestinians and Palestinian factions even in Gaza are warning that this is very provocative. We've seen a rise in settler attacks, which we've covered extensively. Do you think this is not, in the Israeli public opinion, is not part of the story of why these people are breaking out of 16 years of siege and going on this kind of attack into Israel?
What I'm saying is that this incident has happened even before. Remember, before Ramadan of this year, there were tensions in al-Aqsa. There were several rounds of escalation with the PIJ, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, based on similar issues. So the core issues of the conflict is definitely there. The practicalities of how this conflict is handled have been managed differently until what happened yesterday. So this is why what is happening is different. Okay, the reality is there and nobody's denying it, but what is happening is very different than before. And the type of action that has been taken yesterday against Israeli civilians is in a scope that never happened. So there is ways to do the warfare. I think what we saw yesterday is the Israeli mindset crosses all of those lines and enters a new reality, again, without denying the difficult situation that Israelis and Palestinians are living at during the last decade, actually.
Given the large number of Israeli casualties so far, do you think that this Israeli government, is going to be under intense pressure now to make not only the very intense and bloody airstrikes which have cost a lot of Palestinian civilian lives, but a ground offensive as well? Do you kind of feel like there's no way out now for this Israeli government other than going with a ground offensive into Gaza?
I think it's difficult to anticipate, and it's not necessarily that one solution will be taken over the other. We do not know. I think currently the goal is to prevent the fighting to continue within Israeli territory. There are still incidents ongoing within the Israeli borders. I think there is a strong will to take action against the military wing of Hamas. There is a willingness to prevent further escalation into other areas. We spoke before about Lebanon in your report. These are things that Israel is not interested in. So I think that's what we'll see in the coming future. Whatever tactics will be used to achieve that, I think it's difficult for us to anticipate.
If Israel does launch a ground offensive, where does it go to next?
It doesn't really link to the ground offensive because the political or the strategic goal of such a cycle of violence should be the same whatever tactic is being operated. Yes, what the Prime Minister said is about taking a prize from the Hamas and having it lose its military capacity. That doesn't mean that this goal could be achieved only by one mean of action or the other. So I would say the tactic that is being used is unrelated to the overall goal, and these two things can be discussed in parallel.
Has the capabilities of Hamas come as a surprise, launching an attack like this by land, by air, and so on?
Yes, what happened was a surprise. There were discussions in the past seeing this as a scenario that Hamas would like to see happening. So I think the sense of surprise is about the actual implementation of this scenario, the ability it was made possible and happened. So it's not only the surprise from Hamas, it's also the surprise of how Israel was expected to be able to deal with such a situation and prevent it. And this didn't happen. And it does relate also to political discussion within Israel that happened throughout the last month about where the focus of this government was and whether it was on the right issues that served the best Israelis' interests.
All right. Thank you very much for your analysis on that. Appreciate your time, Nimrod Goren.